We all think we know the story of the Exodus. Moses, the plagues, the Red Sea, it's one of the most epic stories ever told. But what if I told you the entire thing kicks off with this one tiny detail that's so strange, most of us just read right past it? It's the very first request made to Pharaoh, and it actually holds the key to understanding the entire conflict. And that detail raises a really fascinating question. Why would this grand divine plan for permanent freedom start with a seemingly small, almost misleading request for a 3-day trip? God's goal was total liberation for Israel, right? So this little journey seems like a very, very strange way to start. So let's dive into why. All right, so let's start with this strange opening move. God's plan was nothing short of permanent freedom. But the opening request he tells Moses to make, it's all about a temporary sacrifice. Okay, next up, the request and the rejection. This is where we see how that message actually gets delivered. And more importantly, how Pharaoh's instant reaction tells us everything we need to know about what's really going on here. So check this out. The original instruction was a humble plea, right? Please let us go. But what Moses and Aaron actually deliver to Pharaoh is a direct command. Let my people go. They go from a polite, almost diplomatic request to issuing a divine decree. And you can imagine that immediately ramps up the tension. And Pharaoh's response? It is immediate and absolute. Who is the Lord that I should obey him? I mean, he doesn't just reject the command. He completely dismisses the authority behind it. He's making it crystal clear that he is the only power that matters in Egypt, period. But here's where it gets really telling. Pharaoh doesn't just say no. He punishes them. He makes their work impossibly hard, the whole bricks without straw thing. And his reason? To crush their spirit so they'll stop listening to these so-called lies. Now, that extreme overreaction to what was, on the surface, a pretty small request, that's our first major clue that something much deeper is at play here. This overreaction brings us right to the core argument of the source paper we're looking at today. What if Pharaoh's tyranny isn't a sign of strength at all? What if, behind that powerful facade, he's actually terrified? The paper uses this fantastic Korean term to describe this, jose. It means bluster, a big show of confidence that's really just hiding a deep-seated fear. And that is Pharaoh to a T. He's all bluster. He's projecting this immense power because he is terrified of losing control. A fear, the paper notes, that he inherited from past pharaohs who were always worried the Israelites would join their enemies and just up and leave. As a source paper puts it so well, Pharaoh's fear was psychological, not statistical. You see, this wasn't about the economic hit of losing a workforce. It was a deep existential terror of a people rising up and leaving. It was a threat to his very identity as an all-powerful ruler. And once you get that, everything changes. The 3-day journey wasn't a trick. It was a test, a brilliant, low-stakes diagnostic tool. This small, seemingly reasonable request was perfectly designed to reveal the true nature of Pharaoh's heart and expose whether he was a ruler capable of grace or just an immovable tyrant. So, having failed this initial test, Pharaoh is basically locked into a path of conflict. And as the plagues start to unfold, we see his desperation play out in a series of failed negotiations, each one a frantic attempt to claw back the control he feels slipping away. With each new plague, Pharaoh tries to compromise, but always in a way that keeps him in charge. Okay, fine, sacrifice, but do it here. Then it's, all right, go, but don't go too far. Then, okay, only the men can go. And finally, go, but you have to leave your livestock. Every single offer is a desperate attempt to bargain. He's willing to concede almost anything except for the one thing that actually matters, total freedom. And as the negotiations keep failing, the language itself starts to escalate. The source paper points out that the whole conflict starts with a simple request for a sacrifice, a ritual. But by the end, the fight is about service or worship. It's no longer about a temporary trip. It's about a permanent transfer of allegiance. Who are you going to serve, Pharaoh or God? So, why 3 days? Why that specific number? Well, it turns out it's anything but random. As the paper argues, the number 3 is a powerful symbol that holds the final key to understanding this whole test. The number 3, in the Old Testament, as the source material explains, this isn't just a quantity. It's what's called a small-scale perfect number. It's the smallest number that represents a complete cycle, a whole. And this is the paradox at the heart of the test. A 3-day journey, well, that sounds deceptively short. It seems close enough for Pharaoh to think he can maintain control, right? To send his army after them if he changes his mind. But in the ancient world, it also represented an irreversible distance. It was a point of no return. So let's put all the pieces together. The request sounds controllable, which is what makes it such a perfect trap for a control-obsessed ruler like Pharaoh. But symbolically, it represents a complete, irreversible break. The source even compares it to when Jacob fled from Laban. By the time Laban found out he was gone after 3 days, it was already too late to catch him. It's a profound test of the heart, perfectly disguised as a small, simple request. Ultimately, that's what this all was, an opportunity. It was a small, reasonable chance for Pharaoh to show that his heart wasn't completely hardened. By rejecting this simple act of grace, he revealed his true nature and proved that he was a ruler who would only ever yield to overwhelming force. And in doing so, he sealed his own fate. This ancient story reveals such a timeless principle, and it really leaves us with a question to chew on. What are the 3-day tests in our own lives? What are those small, seemingly minor moments that end up revealing our true character and setting us on a course that becomes irreversible?